Good evening. My name is Tamekia Nash and I will be speaking about my family's unigram tonight. Thank you for coming. As I sat writing about the members of my family, I realized that my family is not as small as I thought initially. My husband's family is quite large, and I always thought that my family was small in comparison. But as it happened, my family was large at one time. However, many of the members of my family have gone on, and we are left with a small remnant. To introduce my family to you, I would have to begin by saying that all of my family came from the deep south. My mother's family, the Wrights, were very wealthy people and held high positions in the community. My maternal great-grandparents owned a great deal of land and were well-respected citizens of Memphis, Tennessee. There they owned a cafe, gas stations, tire shops, the local bar, and many houses, and much land, acres and acres of land. My maternal grandfather inherited wealth and was a deputy sheriff, while my grandmother worked for the government office during the week, and on the weekends she worked at the beauty shop that was built attached to the home. My father's family, the Nashes, were farmers, and they rented housing from my mother's grandparents. The combined families never really got along, as my grandfather always disapproved of my mother's choice for marriage. So they were not the closest families. However, they are my family. Tonight I have put together 4 slides for my family genogram. And here we have the first. This first slide is indicating the living and those that have gone on. You'll notice that those that are deceased have a black star there indicating that they have gone on. And as you can see, many in my family have gone on, and we are left with the remnant that I spoke of earlier. And as you can see, longevity was not inherited by many members of my previous generations in my family. Many of my family members suffered from illnesses associated with the lifestyle choices that were made. And until my generation, no woman has ever collected Social Security, all having passed before the age of 62, the age where you can begin collecting Social Security. The second slide indicates the religious denominations chosen by members of my family, as we are very committed to God, each in his or her own way. As you can see, there are a couple different kinds of denominations represented here, and there are many colors associated. Even throughout the different families, there aren't one predominant denomination noted on that slide. The third slide indicates the geographical areas where my family members either reside now or have resided in the past. And here we have Michigan, Tennessee, Texas, Mississippi, Illinois, and Ohio. And once again, you see many different colors. On my mother's side, it was predominantly Tennessee and Michigan. And as you can see, from that point, we all spread out into our own different territories. I have one brother who still lives in Texas and one sister who lives in Ohio. The last genogram slide, we discovered the illnesses that were prevalent in my family. And until now, in our generation, we are very health conscious, and we choose to avoid the bad life choices made by our previous generations. Some of the members of my family that I would like to mention are my mother and my grandmother. My mother and I share many similarities. She had children very young, and I had my first child before I was 20. We both are very social people, and we love to entertain. She was very overprotective, and as I get older, I realize that I am getting more and more like her in that area. My grandmother and I shared a love affair with food, trying new dishes and new techniques. I remember she taught me to cook very young because I would stand so closely to the stove that she was always afraid that I would get burned. And so from that, she realized that I was very interested in cooking, and so she took the time to teach me, as a young child even, how to prepare very simple dishes, and as I got older, they became more and more complicated. And I'm a decent cook today because of her. These two people influenced me a lot in my decisions as a mother and as a young woman. Some of the people in my genogram I never actually knew personally, like my paternal grandparents, and they're located on all of these slides here. I never knew my paternal grandfather. He died before I was born, and my paternal grandmother, I was actually 3 when she died. So I never really had a close relationship, and as I got older, more and more members of my family passed away. And the one thing that I regret today is that I never had an adult relationship with my mother or my grandmother because I was very young when they passed away. And that's one of the things that I wished I could have had as a young woman, to have that kind of friendship with another woman. My mother, my grandmother. Many of my father's siblings, I knew them, but the relationship was vague and not committed very much. My mother's siblings I knew very well, and we were very close to them as we grew up. The locations noted on the slide for the geography of my family was pretty much our travel guide. We would visit family along the way. So if we visited someone in Tennessee, well, Mississippi wasn't very far from Tennessee, and Texas, you could stay on that same route and go to Texas, and then on your way back you can stop by Illinois and visit the family that lived there as well. So we did get to see a lot of our family growing up. We spent time with distant relatives when possible, and anytime we would go to visit, we would always visit their church. So as you can see, we were very much into our religions, different denominations, and we supported one another. We didn't make everybody do the same thing. I'm thankful for my family, whether they were wealthy or just farmers. It really didn't matter to me because I'm here and I was a part of something great and larger than myself. And so in conclusion, I am just grateful to be a Nash and a Wright. And I have had a wonderful time sharing this with you. I hope you have enjoyed it as well. At this time, I would like to ask if there are any questions that you would like to ask me at this time.
Yes. I'd like to ask a question about your family. You know, I believe that you had a large family, like you mentioned, and if they've ever had a chance on the Nash or the Wright side of the family to ever come together for a family reunion.
Actually, the last family reunion that I can remember, I was a small child. We have not had a family reunion in years, and that's on either side. So maybe that's something that we could get together and maybe something that I could spearhead and put that together. So we can do that. Are there any other questions? Well, if not, I thank you for coming. I'm sorry, Eric, you have a question?
Yes. With you missing that female figure in your house, does that affect the way you raise your kids, your daughters?
Absolutely. I feel that the way that I have 2 daughters and the way that I raise my daughters are pretty much the way my mother raised us in turn, and I think that is the way that her mother raised her 2 daughters, which would be my mother and my aunt. And pretty much just like little ladies, teach you to be quiet, not to do things that pertain to boys, but, you know, have fun with the dolls and tea parties. You know. So we had a very good time growing up, and I would like to think that my daughters are having a wonderful time as well. So if we have no further questions, I would just like to thank you for coming to help me present my family genogram. Thank you so much.